Oh, where'd you go? I got wandered away. I was trying to see if my live stream was working, and next thing I know, it was going to a different site. Oh, that couldn't possibly happen. Well, here we are. It is Tuesday, February 26th. February's coming to a fast end. We've had 48.6 inches of snow, which now you might as well say 49 because we already have another inch out there. And it's still coming down. And our plow broke. Yes, it was not a minor break. Cover on the gearbox cracked and a whole piece stripped away. That's covering the gearbox, and so it's not protecting the gears. That's kind of an important thing. And he had to take the plow off and hoist it up in the garage. He used the winch on the four-wheeler itself to hoist it up. I thought that was pretty ingenious. Anyhow, then he had to take that broken piece out, fashion a new piece, and then the material he used to fashion a new piece was stronger and thicker. But then he had to weld that in where it had all broken off, and he had to weld the other cracks that were already developing. He had to weld those. And then he went to put this mounting thing for the plow in, and he couldn't because he put thicker metal on. Now he had to get thicker bolts, and so he had to go off to the store. So we've done some machining, some welding, upside down welding, he says, and going to get the bolts. And now he's had to make other adjustments. You know, it's all so much fun when something breaks. And I'm just hoping it'll be fixed in time for this snowstorm whenever we're plowing snow again, because they say it's going to be another 5 to 8 inches again. Oh, good Lord. So we're breaking records in Wisconsin for snow. And we had a 132 car pile up on Sunday with the last snowstorm, and only one fatality. And he was a teacher, young teacher, very sad. He got out of his car to try and help someone else, and another vehicle coming into the mess hit him. You know, and you look at those cars, and there's some of them are smashed, and all of the other guys say, no, stay in your car. There's room to live in there. You know, bunker down in your car and hope and pray, I guess, that no gas tank explodes. But people just need to slow down. When it's this bad a snowstorm, whiteouts, blizzard winds, you need to slow down, people. You need to stay off the roads when they tell you to stay off the roads. I mean, I had to go in on those roads. I'm a nurse. I do dialysis. That's a life-saving procedure. That's different. The rest of you, you're just in our way. Okay. It's Michael Savage's God, Faith, and Reason. Oh, and we're cruising right along. We're going to do story 36 and story 37, I believe. And story 38, and that'll be good. That'll be good. So let's get going. Starts with a verse. I always like that. It's Jeremiah 2, verse 20. For of old time I have broken thy yoke and burst thy bands, and thou saidst, I will not transgress. Upon every high hill and under every leafy tree thou didst recline, playing the harlot. Whoa. Faith and Freedom. Story 36. I had a caller on the Savage Nation. That's the name of his radio show. I think I'll tell everybody again. He has a doctorate in like herbal medicine, homeopathics, and he also is a very popular national radio personality, and he's written a lot of books. And most of his books are political. But this time he wrote on religion. So he says, I had a caller. Oh, excuse me. I had a caller on the Savage Nation who compared me to an Old Testament prophet warning people about the dangers of liberalism, modern liberalism, because I think in the past, the past and liberalism of today, they're just not really quite the same thing. It was just after I had done a show segment on the wonderful movie Hacksaw Ridge. The hero, Desmond Doss, drew courage from the Bible and eventually earned the Congressional Medal of Honor without firing one shot. But the caller's point was that everything I had done up to my book, Scorched Earth, was like an Old Testament prophet, while with Trump's war, I played the role of John the Baptist, who said, he must become greater while I decrease. He was referring to the many times I'd had Donald Trump on my show. I didn't know that. I knew he had him on once, including the man who would bring my message of borders, language, and culture to an even wider audience than I already had. It was a very interesting insight. I'll bet that. And I think I read that book, Borders, Language, and Culture. And I think I even gave it to my brother to read. It was a good book. And I know my dentist, he read it and he really, really liked it. So anyhow, he's saying this caller's analysis of his books and his guests was an interesting insight to him. As I said at the beginning of this book, God does not do the heavy lifting for us. It is up to us to find our connection to God and to do his will here. I truly believe that my lifelong fight for our borders, our language, and our culture is part of my mission. As I've said many times, it's indisputable that I helped Trump get elected. Probably. It's equally indisputable that as imperfect as he is, and he's extremely imperfect, as we all are, he represented the only chance to restore a free, just, and godly nation, given the crossroads we were at in November of 2016. Out of all the candidates, and there were good ones in there. There really were. He's the only one that wasn't political. He was a businessman and fought the good fight in many venues. And he was hardened. You know, Dr. Ben Carson, wonderful man. But the people that were fighting against in that swamp would have buried Dr. Ben Carson alive. We needed someone tougher. So he's not perfect, so we have to forgive his sins. He probably was what we needed. And then you know what they say? God doesn't give you what you want, but he'll give you what you need. He may not give you what you ask for. You think you want. He will give you what he thinks you need. So whatever you feel about Trump, and just like me with Obama, I did not like Obama, but apparently we needed Obama at the time, possibly to wake up a few more people. I hope so. And now God says we need Trump, and that's who we got. But what is my role now that Trump has been elected? That same caller suggested that winning the election was akin to the ancient Israelites being freed from bondage in Egypt. I felt that way to some of us. That's not a bad analogy, but let's not forget that even the Israelites didn't go directly from Egypt to the Promised Land. Wandered for 40 years in the desert. Not only did they have to wander for 40 years in the desert before reaching Canaan, they had to conquer the Promised Land before taking possession of it. That's a lot of work. That 40 years of wandering wasn't just bad luck. In Exodus, God makes the Israelites wander in the desert because of their infidelity to him and their decisions to do evil in his sight. And he was training them up to be better. What a great metaphor for where we are today. Yes, we won a crucial election that may have saved our country from irreparable ruin. But Trump hasn't been perfect. He's already taken many wrong turns, as when he allowed the neocons to manipulate him into bombing Syria based on hearsay evidence of Assad gassing his own people. But inside information says that bombing didn't go the way we thought. And I'm just going to be so interested in reading the history books, 10 years from now, what they're going to have to say about that. Because some people say that there were mutually agreed upon targets, and they were targets that the swamp wanted protected. And they said, hey, get your people out, we're going to bomb what the swamp owns in your country. If that was the case, more power to you, President Trump. But like Moses, who also disobeyed God's will while leading the Israelites to Canaan, he is still leading America toward its own promised land. He's made mistakes along the way and will likely make many more in the future. But at least he's taking us in the right direction. Let's not forget that we've had great victories along the way as well, just as the Israelites did at Ai and Jericho. Trump has succeeded in stemming the tide of unvetted refugees from nations with high numbers of Islamic terrorists. He had to take that one all the way to the Supreme Court. And it's been a fight. Everything he's trying to do to keep this country safe has been a fight. And he's been able to get rid of the most onerous regulations Obama put on businesses, particularly in the fossil fuel industries. I remain cautiously optimistic that he won't let the sellouts in his party go too far in repealing environmental regulations under the pretense of reversing Obama's, which were far too restrictive. Yeah, there has to be a balance. You can't cut off everybody's livelihood. There has to be a balance. Most important, Trump has legalized patriotism again. Though he has personally had to endure withering attacks from the media, thought police, he has exposed them for the frauds they are to large portions of the population who never suspected just how much fake news they were being subjected to. I figured it out. I finally started getting involved, went to a few rallies in some key cities, then watched the news on it. And because I had been there, I knew the news was lying. And that was kind of a wake-up call for me. As for me, I'm always asking myself what's ahead and where I should go. To be honest, I don't have an answer to that right now. I feel that I've done my job. Some mornings I wake up and feel like a salmon that has swum upstream, half dead then. I feel I've done the biggest thing I could possibly do in my life and there's nothing left to do. But then I remember Moses, who spent the rest of his life trying to get his people to the promised land after he had freed them from the bondage in Egypt. I know there's still a lot of work to do, to be done to save our nation. Let's not forget, winning elections has yielded disappointing results before. We thought we had accomplished something when we sent conservatives to Washington in 3 straight elections from 2010 to 2014. And what happened? We were stabbed in the back by John Boehner, and and Mitch McConnell. Boehner may be gone, but McConnell is still there, along with a bunch of other rhinos and sellouts. And my understanding is the swamp, once you come in, because you'd elect these great people, and they'd make all these promises, and there were things you wanted. And once they got to D.C., nothing of fruition would come of it. They would not do what they said they were going to do. And pretty soon you find out they're being blackmailed by the swamp. They're being set up. They have tunnels. They have parties. They slip drugs into the drinks. And they take them and they blackmail them. They put them in compromising situations, whether they're aware of it or not, take pictures. And then if they don't do what they want them to do on a bill, they'll finally bring out those blackmail pictures. And they say that Mitch McConnell has been freed or flipped, they call it. I don't know if he has. A part of me still doesn't trust him. Another one that they say has been freed or flipped was Paul Ryan. And that's another one. I still don't trust him. I don't know. We'll see. They have done it to us before, and I don't want them to be allowed to do it again. basically it. There's consequences. If I must again be the only one out there willing to stand up and take the chance of having the Donald Trump camp reject me, cast me out from Eden, I must live with that. So if I'm going to live in Nod, I'll live in Nod. Remember that? Nod, east of Eden. I've lived here my whole life. I'll stay here. I didn't expect to be invited into the Garden of Eden for supporting Donald Trump. And if I'm cast out because I dare criticize the president and the Republican Party, the RNC, so be it. I've wandered in the desert. I'll continue to wander in the desert. It's that simple. I think the simple thing is that the only thing that you should ever put all of your faith and trust in is God. All men tread with carefully, have a little doubt, make them prove it. God doesn't need to prove it. I'm the one conservative who hasn't forgotten why we sent Donald Trump to Washington. It's not enough simply to have him in the White House throwing tweet bombs at the media, which are just traps. He's exposing some of their hypocrisy through those tweets. We sent him there to restore our borders, language, and culture. We need the wall built, the military restored, the economy repaired with fair trade deals that put America first, and ISIS destroyed. We've sent congressmen to Washington for 6 years trying to make a difference, build a wall. And the swamp dwellers in Washington have stabbed them in the back and spat in our faces. I don't want them to do it to us again and think they can get away with it because we're not going to do anything about it. There are millions of us who will do something. Yeah, this passing bills that are thousands of pages and, oh, just pass it. Don't read it. We'll find out what is in it after we pass it. I'm going to slightly swear here. That's bullshit. That's what I want everyone to understand. Our battle is just beginning. Thank God Trump took Mattis out of retirement. He's going to really scare the hell out of you-know-who, probably Hillary. The liberals are going to run like rats off a ship out of the military. Maybe he'll reappoint all the people in the military Obama purged in Stalinist fashion. But even Mattis has a lot of work ahead of him. It all comes down to us. We, the people, must support Trump when he tries to do the things we sent him to Washington to do. I had another caller who told me he had prayed for Trump to win the election. He said, when Obama got elected, I was very confused because I pray all the time. I'm a Christian. And I realized the Bible teaches that all work together for the good, for those that love the Lord. I realized that Obama and the left gave us Donald Trump when the American people seen how vile and nasty these people really are. They come in droves to vote and support Donald Trump. And the churches were filling up bigger than I'd seen in 30 years. That caller said even more than he realized. Yes, it may have been God's will that Trump won the election, but God didn't vote for us. He didn't cast those votes for us. Although I prayed on it, and every time I prayed, God said, you're going to vote for Trump. And in the beginning, when I did not know who I was going to vote for, I looked at God and said, you're kidding, right? You're serious? You're kidding. Every time I prayed on it, it was the same answer. You're going to vote for Trump. And Don, too. Trump. Well, I started looking into it. I started to agree with them. I voted for Trump. He has another verse, even though this has been all political so far. It's going to Ezekiel 11, verse 17. I will even gather you from the peoples and assemble you out of the countries where ye have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. That's true. That's what it says. He didn't reach into the minds of people about to vote for Hillary and zap their minds to change them into Trump voters. Au contraire, he zapped me. Neither did the Russians, by the way. No, the people had to make that decision themselves. They had to decide to vote for Trump and go back to church themselves. Well, I didn't have to go back to church. I'm very much a church-going person. God gave us everything we need to do the right thing. He gave us the ability to reason. He gave us dominion over an entire planet, which is not just a wonderful honor and power thing. It's a big responsibility to nurture and care for the planet. He gave us an innate sense of right and wrong, but he's not going to wave his hand and make everything right after we here on Earth have screwed it up for many generations before there ever was a Trump. We're going to have to do it ourselves. For my part, and this is Michael Savage's part, I'm going to continue to do what I have done for 3 decades. I'm going to keep giving you my analysis of the latest news. I'm going to use my large platform to let Donald Trump know we're with him against the forces of evil, that we support his fight to take America back. And I'm going to speak up when he strays from the path, as I did when he bombed Syria or when he allowed his Twitter feuds to get his presidency off track. A true supporter lets you know when you strayed off course. I'm a true supporter of Trump and his message because it was my message before it was Trump's message. That's true. It was. Like I said, I'm sure Trump read his book when he wrote it, Language Borders Culture. Besides, what did I expect for having back Trump? I didn't expect anything. I didn't want a job, nor do I want one now. I can work in a bureaucracy. I'm not moving anywhere. You know what? That was one of the things when I investigated Trump before he was elected. I looked at his site and I looked at all of the icons and tabs on his site. And one of them was for volunteers. So I thought, okay, let's see what he wants people to volunteer for. I was checking them all. And there was just one question. What can or are you willing to do to help make America great again? It didn't, not one place did it say, what can you do to help make me president? What can you do to help put signs out or go here? No, this is honest to God. That's what it said. What can or are you willing to do to help make America great again? I was very impressed with that. This is what I'm meant to do, which is to broadcast and write books. It does. So the umbrella I bought to take to the inauguration will be auctioned off on eBay one day. It did not go to the inauguration. I don't expect it to go to future State of the Union addresses either. I will auction it off and give money to a charity for veterans. It'll probably bring in a lot of money. I wonder why he didn't go to the inauguration. It was cold. I know it was cold. There is one thing I would like to get out of all of this. Maybe one day Donald Trump will try to persuade the British government to take my name off the UK banned list. I'm still legally banned from visiting that country, basically for telling the truth. It's the truth. He is. That's one thing I hope to get out of all of this work I'm doing, trying to restore some semblance of Western civilization, but it's not what's most important to me. In the end, Moses never made it into the promised land, but he knew his people were going to make it. I can certainly forego making it into the United Kingdom if I can leave knowing my people are going to achieve their promised land after I moved on. That's kind of sweet. Okay, story number 37. The meaning of Passover. I talked about Exodus in an earlier chapter, but I would like to explain the meaning of the Passover holiday in this one. I'm talking about what it means to a person beyond the ritual and how it can be used to improve oneself. Again, if a religion doesn't in some way give you courage, strength, or hope, that religion is useless as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it needs to challenge you to grow. Religion should give you some connection to the ultimate power that drives the universe. I have studied a variety of religions during my life, at sometimes more actively than at others. I've looked for the truth in so many places and in so many ways that my head spins just thinking about it. It has also been an attempt to find meaning in life. What am I doing here? What's the purpose of life? Why do good people suffer? Why do bad people sometimes not suffer? These are the eternal questions. If you find answers in religion, you're lucky. Most people don't. Oh, I think out of all the books I've read, I've come to the conclusion the purpose of life is to learn and to love. Why do good people suffer? It's when we suffer, we're closest to God. We reach out to Him when we're closest to God. It's when we suffer, we're challenged to better ourselves by helping others who are suffering. Why do bad people sometimes not suffer? To accentuate to the good people how this leads to worse things, how it complicates your life, how it makes your life less joyous, less abundant. So even though when you look deeper, you see it's not true happiness. It's like the people in the swamp. I look at them and I think of that Hans Christian Andersen movie or tale called The Red Dancing Shoes, The Red Shoes. And the little ballerina, she just loved them. She couldn't wait to get them on. She couldn't wait to start dancing them. And when she danced them, she danced the best she had ever danced in her life. But there was only one problem. She could not get the shoes off, and she could not stop dancing. And she literally danced herself to death. And I see these people who supposedly have it so good, everything going their way, they're still dancing. And they can't ever retire. And they can't be ever anonymous. I mean, there's things they don't have that I do have that I think they wish they had. It's just me. These are the eternal questions. If you find answers in religion, you're lucky. Most people don't. You are not going to find it unless you hang close to God and keep talking to Him. Most people, in my experience, sit in church or synagogue, go along with the program, don't even know what they're doing. They hear nothing. They're numb. They go in numb and they come out numb. They take away nothing from it. Occasionally, a person is touched or reached by one of the holy books sitting there, or by a teacher. Occasionally, someone is touched by another person. And that's good enough. You can't expect an entire flock to be touched. I think you can't go into church and expect to have all knowledge and to completely understand everything in that mass that you just witnessed. I think if you come out challenged by just one point or touched by just one person, then you're doing good. But there is a higher thing in religion, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, or even Hinduism. All of it is an attempt to tap into some power. Even paganism. We are so slipping into paganism right now. Hello, they just voted that if a baby is born alive, but it was supposed to be aborted, you can murder it. Yeah, they just voted on that. If that's not paganism, I don't know what is. Although not one of the 5 major religions is people trying to tap into a power that runs through them. They want the power. They want the energy. They want to be innervated. They want to feel the power. They don't want to be denervated. They don't want to go to a church and come away feeling weaker than when they went in. Every year, people flock to Lourdes in France by the hundreds of thousands. They believe that if they touch the holy water in the grotto at the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes, they will be healed. They believe it can make the crippled walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. Sometimes people will jump up and say, "I'm healed, I'm healed." Are they? What are they going there for? They're going there for a miracle. What's a miracle? It's the energy, the power that drives the entire universe. It's the energy of creation. It's the energy that makes a blade of grass start from a seed, a dormant dead thing, and turn into a beautiful green living thing that makes more seed. That seed is you. Many of us are walking around like a husk, a dead seed, but inside the apparently dead seed, there's a living green piece of grass, just as inside an acorn there's a great tree. Many of us remain a seed, live our whole life as a seed. waiting for someone, whether it be a woman or man or vice versa. We wait for someone or something to awaken the seed into life and make it come alive, make a piece of green grass or a tree grow from it. People often try to find that through religion. Some do. Some go to church every Sunday. Some go every day. Sunni Muslim prays 5 times a day. He believes he's reaching God 5 times a day. He feels the energy. Many of us cannot feel it at all when we're alone, but when we go into a temple, a mosque, a church, we can. Have you ever been in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City on Christmas Eve? Nope. If you have, or if you have been, that one was a prank call. Sorry about that. I'm going to put that on silent. Okay. Yeah, that was a prank call. Back to the book. Have you ever been in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City on Christmas Eve? If you have, or if you have been in an Orthodox Jewish temple in Brooklyn, New York, when there are 5,000 men chanting at the same time, that would be cool. Or even in a village setting where there are 20 men chanting, you felt an energy that you will never feel alone. So there's an argument for the congregation. But I haven't touched on Passover yet. That's true. I think the church, the actual going to the church, that's the communion, the real communion, the being a community, being together in one mode of loving God. The Jewish people are a very small minority numerically, both in the world and in the United States of America. I think even non-religious Jews have a Seder. Now, many Christians understand what a Seder is. I do. Sometimes Christians go to Seder because they have Jewish friends or someone in their family has married a Jewish person. No, we actually practice the Seder to help us understand the roots of our Christian faith. The Catholics do have Seder meals in certain places. It's a rather peaceful, nice long meal with various ritualistic events, very ritualistic, very steep in meanings, including the unleavened bread or matzah. We have the unleavened bread, usually in soda crackers. Signifies the time of haste when the Jewish people were fleeing Egypt and had to make bread in the desert. They didn't have time to allow the dough to rise. The children love this kind of thing if they understand it at all. I don't know if they even teach it to the children anymore. The children understand that their ancestors were once slaves, but they don't really know what that means. A modern Passover Seder may not mean the same thing to people today as the ancient one did to the Israelites. I'm not against tradition. I'm just saying a lot of people don't hear the message anymore or want to listen. Although they may say, our ancestors were slaves, it has no meaning. What it can mean for us today is that we are still slaves in our own life, and we can break the bonds of slavery anytime we want. If you take it as a personal Seder, personal Passover, you can learn to release yourself from your own chains, whether they be alcohol, drugs, sexual addiction, gambling addiction. You could say you are a slave. You could come to understand you are enslaved. You can decide from that day forward to seek to break those chains of bondage and become a free man or a free woman. That's another way to interpret the significance of Passover. To give it a modern meaning, an eternal meaning, you must take meaning from the ancient and give it some modern meaning, or else it loses its value altogether. Those who forget the past are condemned to relive it. To most people, it has to do with chicken, chopped liver, fish brisket, and things of that nature. It's about drinking too much wine because you're supposed to drink 4 cups of wine. For too many people, it's an excuse to get drunk around a communal table in a nice setting with a clean tablecloth and good silverware. But the Passover Seder is about breaking our bondage. Yeah, I don't remember drinking a lot of wine at the Seder Catholic meals, but there was like bitters to remind people how bitter it was to be a slave. And of course, the unleavened bread. And there were prayers. We said prayers. Okay, here, speaking of prayers, Isaiah 10, verse 22. For thy people, O Israelite, be as the sand of the sea, Only a remnant of them shall return, and extermination is determined, overflowing with righteousness. The last story we're going to read today, Buddhism, the religion of submission. Back to Buddha. What ties together everything in the Jewish scriptures is the responsibility for man to actively seek God and do his will. That's where I believe the Judeo-Christian tradition is superior to Buddhism. Whereas Jews and Christians are called by the scriptures and belief systems to actively change their own lives and try to make the world a better place. Buddhism is very much a religion of submission and accepting the world as it is. I remember a caller in the Savage Nation who had wonderful insight into this. He said, well, I respect the Buddhist perspective. I understand the desire to remove oneself from the karmic wheel. But it has always struck me, in a sense, as being a dichotomy in that the other side of the coin is an avoidance of the human experience. Good point. You have no attachment. You seek no goals. In essence, you seek to become an empty cup. Does God want us to be empty cups? I don't think so. I do not think God wants us to become empty cups. I couldn't have agreed with that caller more. When I was much younger and doing a lot of reading on the subject, I concluded myself that all religions are somewhat specific to the nation and the people at the place and time in which they were established. Buddhism was a religion that was very good for people who were serfs and had no chance to advance themselves, had no power to advance themselves. No matter what they did, no matter how they did it, they would never move ahead. Their offspring would never move ahead. They were cast. So they naturally embraced a religion that teaches that it's the norm to get nowhere. That no matter what you do, you're going to struggle and fail. That was their situation under the socio-political system they lived under, and they developed a religion that would allow them to cope with or make sense of their lot in life under that system, that oppressive system. So Buddhism was ultimately a religion for submission to the inevitable of getting nowhere in life. It's like all religions that appeal to people who are broken and suffering in this life because they promise eternal life in another place. That's fine and good to believe in. It can be very healthy and keep you going and make you a noble person. I believe. So that was 38. We move on next with 39. So it's time to end the stream. I went way too long today. I must have got on a political soapbox. Why don't you guys come in the chat room and give me a kick in the butt when I do that? All right, ending the stream. God bless. I love you.